From architecture to painting and sculpture, literature to live music and theater. Radio 111 presents Bonnie G and Brian Mendoza with The Desert Scene, your connection to culture and entertainment in the desert cities. Here's Bonnie and Brian.
And welcome to The Desert Scene. I'm Bonnie G here with my fabulous producer, Brian Mendoza, and we're really happy to welcome to the show Craig Pomranz, who is doing a wonderful cabaret show, this fabulous series they've been doing at CV Rep all summer, and he's coming up Thursday, August 18th. His show is called Welcome Back, Jazz Me, Songs of the 20s and 30s. Hi, Craig. How are you?
I'm terrific. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for being here. We're excited to talk to you. So
I'm excited to be here.
I've been looking at your bio. I looked up, printed some stuff out. My goodness, what an interesting career you've had so far. So let's start from the very beginning. Born in St. Louis, youngest of four sons, and I didn't get to this part. Did you have a musical family? Were you the only musical person or performer in your family?
No one. It's interesting because no one in my family, and yet my father had a really beautiful voice, and he actually, unbeknownst to me until I started being a professional, well, I was a professional by 11, but I started doing it professionally. He was the lead in the HMS Pinafore in his high school in Passaic, New Jersey.
Wow, that's great. So, all right. So, tell us about your journey. So, you started singing in school, and tell us about how you started out and then became pro.
When I was in St. Louis, we have at the time, a very wonderful, well, there's still the largest professional outdoor theater in the country called the Muni Opera.
Okay.
And at the time when I was there, it sat 14,000 people. Anyway, I started singing just because I always sang, and someone said you should audition for the Muni, and there are 800 kids from around the Midwest audition, and I got the role.
Wow.
And that was when I was 11. So then all of a sudden I became a professional. But I've been sort of and I was, as most people, a very shy kid. And so singing was my way of getting attention and sort of learning to be less shy and learning to sort of engage with other people.
Yeah, I think that's very common. I sing and act as well. So let's see. And still in high school, you attended Broadway plays and you went to piano bars like the Village Green and got to sit and listen to Johnny Meyer and Murray Grand. And then
Murray Grand is a dear friend of mine. Yeah.
I'm looking at this. I love this story. There was a woman you did Over the Rainbow, and a woman came up to you and said, "Some people need to sing. You are one of those people. I could listen to you forever." And that was Teddy King. So tell us a little bit about that.
Teddy King, well, actually, so John Meyer was playing piano bar at a place called the Painted Pony, and he played for Teddy King. Teddy King is a very well-known jazz singer, and she had her own club in Boston. But she would come to New York, like most people, to do gigs. And she was in the audience, she was at the piano bar, and when I got up and sang, and she came up to me and she said that, and she encouraged me to sort of do it more as a profession because, I came to New York as a dancer and to be serious actor, theater person. And she sort of encouraged me that singing was one way to go because at that time, I didn't think that kind of music that I did, this kind of standards and Great American Songbook, wasn't sure you could make a living at it. So,
okay.
Well, of course, making a living as an actor was much easier.
And, that is such a great story because I love hearing that because as performers, we're all insecure, have our own insecurities, and to have someone, especially someone else in the business who has achieved a certain amount of success, say something like that is so huge and is such an important motivator to keep going. As the reverse is, many of us have had childhood voices, parents, whoever say, you're not that good, you should forget about it, and those things stay with you, whether it's positive or negative.
And Bonnie, the thing is that. What was so interesting to me was because I didn't really know who she was. So I had to research who she was. And then to come to realize that there are all kinds of successes. I was a teenager when that happened. So to realize there are all kinds of successes and all ways to be in this business and make a living for yourself and not beat yourself up, which we do every day anyway.
Yeah, yes.
So it was a wonderful thing to have someone of that stature in her arena it just meant so much. And she was a mentor in many, many ways.
Yeah.
Also, because if no one has heard her, Teddi King, I mean, she's remarkable. She has the voice of Barbara Cook and the emotionality of Judy Garland.
Wow, I'm not familiar with her. I'm gonna have to look her up. Okay, so tell us about your very first cabaret show in New York. What that was like, one person show.
I had just arrived, and I was again singing at a piano bar, and Ted Hook, who was a famous, he owned a lot of clubs in New York City. He was in the room, and afterwards he came up to me and he said, do you have an act? Because I have someone who in 2 weeks canceled and I need someone to fill that spot. Can you do 2 nights? And I, of course, said, of course, I do, even though, of course, I didn't. But word of mouth got around. It was completely sold out.
Wow.
And it was just kind of a remarkable thing. And then just sort of, it was, in fact, the thing that elevated me to doing it on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are a couple of things. First of all, I love this one thing. So you've branched out. You've done a lot of different things, studio work, commercials, voiceovers, and your acting and dancing skills led to a series of commercial bookings as a dancing can. Was that a can of Pepsi? Yeah. Tell us about that.
No, I was not. Coke.
Coke, okay.
But that's one of those things that's such an industry idea. So they had a call for dancers, and there were hundreds of us. And then they said it's going to be a Saturday Night Live kind of scene, wear a 3-piece white suit. So the guys wore 3-piece white suits, and girls came in like that dress code, whatever that was for the time period. I can't remember. And when we got there, they said, we've a change of plans. Please get out of your clothing and step into this. And then they brought out this can.
Yeah.
And it was a huge can, and then you put your arms through and your legs through. And then they said, we're giving you choreography. And I'm thinking, well, you can only see my wrists and my arms and my legs. It's like, what kind of choreography? But anyway, what's interesting about that is what happens often. So they chose 6 of us. I was one of the 6. And anytime for the next, I think, 3-5 years, anytime they needed anyone in a can or a costume like that, they hired the same 6 dancers. So it was a good gig.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Okay. So
my mom would show the picture to people and say, I would recognize those ankles
anywhere. Yeah. Was your family supportive of you pursuing this as a career?
Yes. Tepid, right? I mean, we're from St. Louis. We knew nothing about the theater. They knew nothing about the theater. My mom always, at 4'11", thought she could be a Rockette, which I said, well, maybe not. But I think they just really appreciated what they saw as a lot of talent, but they just had no concept, which is very different now, that you could make a living at it.
Right.
And it was interesting because I started making a living and giving money to the family, right? Because I was home and we needed money, so I would make money and it would go to my, so it was, whether it was modeling or doing voiceovers or commercials and stuff like that. So but they did not necessarily see how I could take it to New York or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
And a couple other things in your bio that I found fascinating. I love this one quote, that you always had more interest in the work and not the fame because you wanted to build a well-rounded life. And I think that's so important. I mean, I guess there's some people, some people end up Barbra Streisand, et cetera, but most of us don't. And I think having a well-rounded life is so important. You can be a wonderful performer and be successful, make money at it, but also have a home life and a partner and friends and dogs and, have some sort of normalcy, I think is important. So is that kind of always what you felt?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Was that all?
I think that the focus is what changes for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And it only helps give you layers to what it is that you do on a stage.
Exactly.
And there are a million people. One of the other things when I'm asked or when I write articles about voice and stuff like that, I'm always saying, a million people have pretty instruments. A million people can carry a tune, but do they know how to sing? It's a very different thing being able to sing and tell a story than it is to just make vocal pyrotechnics.
Yes. And I love this other quote. One of my attractions to performing is the ability to create silence. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. God, you're asking all the questions that I love. Well, I think that early on when I would sing there was a jazz a room in New York City, and they would only let well, this will sound weird. I want to tell that story. Okay. I would go into a room, and it could be a noisy, loud, crowded room, and Over the Rainbow is a good example. I could sing 2 notes and silence the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know why, and I'm not trying to be arrogant about it,
mm-hmm.
but to be able to do that, it's an incredible power.
Yes.
That and it's the same thing when I'm acting. If I know people are silent, it's because they're really listening to what I'm doing.
Exactly. Yes, that's so true. Well, so tell us about the show on the 18th. Tell us how you put together the show.
It's so interesting because all the songs of the jazz age are so relevant. And so when people think of the Great American Songbook and the standards and stuff like that, I think that they forget that, human beings are the same. It's all cyclical. Things become, more prevalent now than later. But but when you go do these songs, I'm doing a song. I mean, there's a song about, I'm not doing this song, but there are songs about from the 1920s, which were crazy times. There were all songs about social issues.
Right.
So when I talk about nowadays, when we talk about mystifying pronouns, I'm doing a song that's all about mystifying pronouns from 1921.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think the relevance of doing all these songs, which not only sustain themselves, but are also incredibly beautiful songs. I just loved discovering that myself, even though I sort of knew it, but I became more aware of it as I kept looking for new material.
Would you say that, I always like to ask singers what their go-to song is. Would you say Over the Rainbow is one of your go-to songs if you go somewhere and they say, Craig, please come up and sing something?
At one time, I think it changes over time.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I first got here, it was. And then, there are a few songs that it really depends because you don't know if the pianist can change your key. Or,
exactly,
stuff like that. So you choose. So, there are a few songs that I have that I know no matter what key it's going to be in, I'll be able to do it.
Yeah. This show, again, Craig Pomranz, welcome back, Jazz Me, Songs of the 20s and 30s, musical director Steve Rollins, directed by Ronald Cohen. It is Thursday, August 18th, 7 p.m. at CV Rep, which is a fabulous venue. You'll love it. And you can get tickets at cvrep.org. Well, Craig, what a lovely time chatting with you, and best of luck. I'm sure you're gonna knock them dead.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh, please do. Yes.
Because you mentioned Over the Rainbow.
Uh-huh.
I used to go to Sri Lanka 3 times a year, and we were there after the tsunami. And we sang at all these sort of adoption places for adoption for kids who were misplaced. And the one song that they all knew was Over the Rainbow.
Wow, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Craig. Knock 'em dead, and thanks so much for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
All right, you too. And we'll see you guys next time on The Desert Scene.